Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. So with the yearly release of every iPhone and Apple product, I feel like I'm not alone when I say I didn't necessarily expect too much to come from this Apple event. Maybe some more safety features like they added last year with the Apple Watch. There's a lot of innovations that they're making, but not necessarily anything incredibly noticeable year to year. And when there is, it's a pretty big deal. When we saw the Face ID over the traditional fingerprint scanner, the home screens going away with the floating island, all of that kind of affects everybody in a way. I'm not saying that everybody is an Apple user, and I assume probably a lot of you guys, if you like handheld gaming, maybe you are not a big fan of iOS and their lack of modding and stuff like that you can do with them. So I'm here to inform a lot of you guys who didn't tune in today on what the event meant for handheld gaming and how that kind of affects us as a community or a space or just the whole, I don't know, economy of that. I'm going to be summarizing this in a way that I feel like is the most informative to you guys. I don't have a ton of specs on all of the different things with that iPhone in particular. If you want that, that is definitely available and out there for you to find very easily now that that event has ended. So to the meat and bones of all of this, what does this mean? And what am I trying to get at here? So the iPhone 15 Pro essentially has a graphics card, if you will, built into the CPU that it's got running now. Now, I probably butchered that in explanation, but essentially, right, the iPhone 15 Pro is going to be a powerhouse of gaming. Now, one of the first things that I saw that really knocked my shoes off wasn't necessarily that it could do this. I know on the App Store we've got stuff like Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, games that aren't, and you know, of course, you've got Dual Jump and whatnot, and those have always existed, and that has what has dominated the mobile gaming space for so long. Is you're not seeing everyone walk around with one of these. When I walk around with this, people ask me questions, they're kind of excited by it, and I find that to be very cool. With an iPhone, if you see somebody playing Clash of Clans, they're just one of the billion people who play mobile games, and it's not that big of a deal. The thing that really blew me away was console games are going to be starting to port over to Apple devices, specifically that 15 and going forward. I don't think this is something that they're going to just leave behind. This is an incredibly huge market that they could potentially cash in on as part of their microtransaction policies, but later on that in the video. So the first thing, Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil Village, as well as some of the Division games, all sorts of these AAA console games from the 360, Xbox One that were kind of limited by a lot of the capabilities of those consoles at the time, now can be optimized and played on the iPhone 15 Pro sometime in the first part of 2024, I believe. Now, why is this a big deal? So something like the Asus ROG Ally that makes this different from something like a Steam Deck is this is essentially just a Windows computer. This is something that no one making games is going to recognize this as its own console and specifically optimized for this. This has to be a powerhouse in order to keep up with the minimum spec requirements for a lot of games. And in most cases, it does a fantastic job. Now, what the iPhone and the Nintendo Switch are different is they are always the same. They are essentially a console, right? That's why you could see Doom Eternal being played on the Nintendo Switch at relatively playable levels. I mean, we could argue about that, but there's a lot of AAA games that were ported to the Switch that me personally, I've played and enjoyed. I'm trying to think of a lot of them off my head. Wolfenstein was a very fun game that I enjoyed. Some of the Metro games are on there. Just a lot of games that you wouldn't necessarily think when you think Nintendo were optimized and brought over to be played on there. Why is that a big deal? Is that means that they are able to take games that normally require a whole lot, like an entire computer or an entire setup to play. They can just be handcraft tailored to fit the specifications after the release date to be played on those consoles. With the iPhone 15 Pro, you guys, like, this is incredible. We could start seeing games be playable at 30, 60 FPS on an iPhone. Now, if you take this right here, cut this about right there, maybe a little bit bigger, and that size, that is what you hold in your hand. That's who you call your mom with. That's what you do everything on. that could be essentially playing games that this entire unit plays. Now, essentially, what would this become is just a clunky, it's just a big controller at that point. So, of course, you're not going to get the controls that something like this would have playing on Apple, which is why they, of course, included that it works with all sorts of controllers. So if you've got yourself a PlayStation 5 controller, 4, Xbox One, Series X controller, there's a lot of controllers that are Bluetooth compatible. If you have that and the latest iPhone, when it comes out, you will hopefully in the next year after that, there'll be a decent selection for you. Now, why this makes sense for Apple moving forward is I'm fairly certain they get around 30% of all transaction money made, which is why Fortnite left the Apple Store, if you remember that whole fiasco that went down. Fortnite is playable on the handheld device, playable on the iPhone, I'm getting ahead of myself here, via cloud streaming, but that's how they're able to get around having to pay Apple their percentage of the microtransaction fee for using Apple as a platform to have their games be played off of. Now, I'm not expecting a lot of companies to really be head over heels for that. I know that COD with Activision has kind of bit the bullet. They hired that other company to develop this game, but use the name. And of course, they're losing out on a decent amount of profit that they could be making if they just did on the Apple Play Store or something. I don't know the exact margins on that, but the reason Apple is such a big deal is it is very, very powerful. And every single year we get better and better devices. That's not always the case with a lot of these phones that we're getting. Yes, hardware wise, but they lack in other areas. Not to diss on any Google Play or any of these other phones that they aren't keeping up or doing good, because they definitely have their markets in their areas. It's just predominantly for me in the area I live in, iPhone is something that every single person has attached to them. It is very rarely that I see somebody have something a little bit different. When I do, I tend to ask them about it because it's that much of a rare occurrence. So Apple, in my area at least, dominates a lot of the people. So that means that you've already got customers who have your device, and you've probably got a lot of gamers as well who just haven't made that connection, who've merged that gap. They think that if they're going to want to play something, I was just playing Resident 4 the other day. Resident Evil 4 on the go, they're going to have to purchase something like this for $350 or $700, whatever, when in reality they already have that in their pocket. Now, besides the optimization, besides everyone already having it in their pocket, Apple is just an incredibly big company that has a lot of resources available to them. So you best believe that they're going to do a lot of weight throwing in order to get certain game titles onto them. This was just what they were able to show us and tell us right now as kind of just the cherry on top. Them telling us that the graphics were going to be able to play these games and have better whatever, for Honkai and Genshin. I mean, that's kind of a given. But them including that, yeah, console games are going to start making their way over onto the iPhone. That is the big deal to me, because it's not even out yet. It's not even in people's hands. And that's already the lineup that we're getting. I don't necessarily, it's not that I don't care about a lot of people's opinions. Resident Evil 4 is a fantastic game. It is a very, very good game. And the fact that we're going to be getting that on handheld as just the very beginning, regardless of whether it's not on the Apple Arcade or if that's a whole separate purchase you have to make, that will be a topic for another video once we get closer to actually seeing these in people's hands. That makes me excited because Xbox Game Pass is trying to get on as many platforms as possible. Now, whether or not this will lead into anything more will definitely be a discussion for Phil and whoever to have. But could you imagine you open the Xbox app and instead of it being a social hub, as well as being a social hub, it would be a place to download and play games instead of streaming them, which, at least for where I live, the internet that I have available to me is not necessarily the greatest experience. A lot of that, your mileage may vary. I'm not entirely sure if you live in a bigger city where the internet is better for you or worse. For me, it's very rural, mountains, and I'm just not getting that experience that I thought it was going to be. So for me, I'd rather just natively play the game. So having that option to potentially have select games like Call of Duty, like Bethesda games, be optimized after the fact to be played on handheld like that, in that very small form factor with a controller, is incredibly exciting for me. That essentially takes all of this work that we've been, I say we, and I just mean this as a whole, been working towards, and kind of just throws it under the under the bed. At least to me, right now, just my thoughts and opinions day one after hearing this could be really big. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you, sell your Steam Deck, sell your Ally, because that's not the case, because we just don't know right now. But potentially, if Apple plays their cards right, if Xbox plays their cards right, hell, even maybe Sony, maybe that's why they showed this controller in the showcase today, was maybe they've got something in the works with Sony and trying to get, I mean, that would make a lot of sense to me now that I'm realizing it. You've got very cinematic experiences like The Last of Us Part 1, Part 2, you've got Horizon. There's a lot of these games that are very cinematic and kind of scream that premium quality that Apple really likes to show with their products. If you've seen any of their advertisements or if you own any of their products, I think you know what I mean. I think Sony strives for that as well. So maybe that was a nod to the future of maybe Sony's streaming service or their subscription service along with streaming. Time will only tell. I'd love to hear all of your guys' feedback on this. I know it wasn't very much to look at here. Doing 10-minute podcasts once every week wouldn't necessarily do it justice. I'm trying to get these ideas out to a wider audience just so you guys can have the ability to talk about this, because hell, I know everybody wants to have some time during their day to sit back and just have an open discussion. You might not be able to do that. Maybe no one really cares about it at your work or your family. I know mine doesn't. I could sit here and blab about this, talk someone's ear off all day, but there's not really necessarily people that I know in real life who would love to just sit there and listen. So hopefully you guys found today's video topic interesting. If you did, feel free to subscribe. I try to keep a very consistent upload schedule, but things kind of tend to go all over the place. I'll try and keep everyone updated on how this progresses. Of course, this is going to be very popular, so do expect me to try my best to keep up with it. Very excited for Payday 3. That open beta was very incredible. If you guys played that, the performance, if we can overlook that, the gameplay was very good. Let me know about that in the comments below. But with all that being said, you guys have a fantastic rest of your week. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Game on.